Well, there's two networks that don't have an anti-link bias, Blue Sky and Mastodon, which are both small, right?
Yeah.
Mastodon's like 2 million. Blue Sky is bigger. It's like 30 million. But those networks, even in those places, you get more engagement, more amplification, more reach with zero-click content because it's not just algorithms, it's people.
Dit is de Jerel Arcus podcast. Een podcast over organisch groeien voor B2B bedrijven. Hier is jullie host, Jerel Arcus.
I think we are ready to go, Rand.
All right, let's do it.
Thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure, Gerald. Good to be here, man.
I just listened for 45 minutes to your talk on the stage. Really loved it. It was about, how would you summarize it?
I think it's basically me trying to figure out what's changing in digital marketing. And I put forth these kind of 6 theories about, well, is it the economy? Is it changing social platforms and opportunity? Is it search?
And then you were talking about the decline of results or...
Decline, but also just strangeness and change. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that marketers, in my experience, are feeling, digital marketers in particular, are feeling the last, I'm going to say 3 years, since the kind of COVID slump and bump, is that their work is much more difficult. Yeah. Getting traffic is more difficult, especially organic content of all kinds is more difficult. Why is that? What's happening? Is it because the economy is not so good? Is it because platform incentives are changing? Is it because search is changing? Is it because of this zero-click thing? Is it something else? Is it large language models and AI that's changing us?
And there's some data for a lot of these theories, but on the other hand, nobody till now maybe has the complete overview of what is happening together and what is the full story.
Yeah, and that was my goal, right? Like, come to Friends of Search. I'm not in search specifically, but hopefully I'm a friend of search.
I think you can say that.
And so I wanted to try and tackle these theories with data and charts and things that, serious people could say, yes, that is an answer to this question.
Yeah. And you had some takeaways in the talk. What is the conclusion of your talk or the data that you showed?
Yeah, I think at least as of January of 2025, we could say fairly definitively it couldn't be just the economy. No. Like, generally speaking, wealthy countries, the US, EU, a lot of parts of Asia, Australia, New Zealand, there's turmoil for sure, but it is not sinking. We are not in global recession. It's not, it's not like April 2020 or 2008 or something like that.
Yeah, nothing big.
Nothing big. So therefore, we have to look at things that are happening inside our environment. Yeah. And my big takeaway from all the theories was, if you are still focused on traffic, you're going to have a bad time. Because every single platform, whether we're talking about search platforms like Google or large language models and AI tools like ChatGPT, or social platforms like Instagram and Reddit and TikTok and YouTube, all of them are reducing the traffic that they send out, and they are concentrating their power and their influence in native content.
And you also had some slides from, I think, 2014, that we were complaining about Facebook and the organic reach, and now we are jealous on what we had.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, back in the day, right, you could, and I did post things to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and I would not only reach a lot of people, but I would draw a lot of traffic and relevant traffic. If you try and do that today, your results are going to be terrible. The social networks intentionally bias against posts that have links in it. When Elon made the Twitter algorithm public shortly after he bought the network, it showed in the algo, there's a place in there you can see that if you include a link in your post, they will devalue its reach by approximately 10 times the amount that it would ordinarily reach. And this is true on Threads. It's true in Reddit. It's true, like YouTube, you could see a few years ago made that change where, remember, the YouTube description used to include the link that you put in the description. Now, if you put a link in there, they hide the description until you click more. So Like they're all trying to hoard traffic.
And there are a lot of theories about this because, so for example, on LinkedIn, some people say it's the algorithm. Some people say, yes, maybe, but for the user, it's also better if you can consume it on the platform. And of course, that's the case for a lot of things. If I don't have to click, also in Google, I'm not going to click.
I think this is also the reason why you can see that slight decline in email click-through rate. Email open rate has stayed steady, but people don't like to click out of the platform environment that they're in. If I'm in email mode, I don't want to have to go somewhere else. If I'm on YouTube, I don't want to go to your website. If I'm in LinkedIn, I want to stay in LinkedIn. If I'm on Reddit, I keep browsing Reddit. And
I think the zero-click mindset, you can attach it to anything. Because I think 2 weeks ago I saw in a B2B community someone asking about, I have this email and I want to send it to an article. Should it be the article on LinkedIn or should it be the article on the website or maybe some other place? And my answer was, so why don't you put the whole article in the email?
In the email.
No link.
So Amanda Natividad, who's my colleague at SparkToro, she started doing this with all of our email content. And as a result, she grew our email list from like 15,000 to 45,000. The open rates are now above 40%. Like, we do great. People consume the content, they just don't go to a website to do it.
I have a few email subscriptions, not a lot, because I'm not someone who reads a lot of emails for knowledge. But the ones that I do read are all zero-click, without exception.
Yeah, I think the only thing that people with those successful newsletters do is they include citations. So if you want to click, you can.
Yeah, and of course that's good.
Which is good. I like that, but you can also you can get all of the gist of what they're saying right in the email without visiting anywhere.
Can you put
a
little bit closer? Sorry. But also when you look at algorithm, does it matter if the algorithm is punishing a link or not? Because if I know that it's better for the user and if it will create more engagement, so that's also reach, maybe that's good enough for me to have a different approach.
Yeah, and the only network, well, there's two networks that don't have an anti-link bias, Blue Sky and Mastodon, which are both small, right? Yeah. Mastodon's like 2 million. Blue Sky is bigger. It's like 30 million. But those networks, even in those places, you get more engagement, more amplification, more reach with zero-click content because it's not just algorithms, it's people.
Yeah, I think 10 years ago it was normal to visit a lot of websites, and now we don't want it anymore. There's so much content. There's a content, what's the best term?
Deluge.
Overload, tsunami. There's so much. So we don't want to make a lot of effort to consume it. And it should be, in a lot of cases, also snackable. Of course, not always, because there is a place for in-depth, long content.
Form, sure.
But
I would say it's almost the TikTokification of the internet.
Yeah.
Right? That TikTok trained people in two ways. And it's not just TikTok, right? I'm obviously Instagram before them too. But they trained us as users to have shorter and shorter attention spans and to expect that all the stuff we consume would keep us in the platform. We're happy to swipe, but we don't like to click.
And also, even if we don't have to click, we want the value within 2 seconds, and otherwise we will swipe it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I was this morning, I was also recording a podcast here, and we talked about that SEO is moving more to video. But a lot of SEO people, for a lot of SEO people, it's very hard because video SEO is about how many people will stay watching and how good are the first 10 seconds of your video. That's not something you can fix with meta tags and things like that. You have to have a really good video.
Yeah, and this is another thing that I think is weird. Really good rarely is the way to describe it, right? Like
I agree.
Yeah, we talked about this, Cheryl, right? Like there's this idea in people's head that I need to create, high quality content or 10x content or really great stuff. And that's not actually, I think, useful advice, nor is it what you should try and do. My suggestion, if you want reach and amplification, if you want to do well on YouTube or TikTok or LinkedIn or Reddit or anywhere else, is not create something that's really good. That's almost useless to say. What I would instead say is what is content that tends to perform? What are the formats? What are the topics? What is the style? What are the hooks that get people emotionally invested in something right at the start so that they stick around and stick with that piece of content? That, in my opinion, is far more actionable, useful advice than create something that's good. I have seen some, frankly, crap content, terrible content. If you spend any time on TikTok, you'll be like, what am I watching? Why am I? This is horrible.
And
it's
still
poorly
you keep
made.
watching sometimes.
Yeah, but you're into it. You're like, oh, it's kind of funny, or like, oh, I don't know what it is that grabs me out of it. It's weird.
It's the reptile part of our brain that's triggered by this. And I have some examples. So, for example, snippets from my podcast with great quotes from industry leaders. I put them on TikTok and they do nothing.
Nothing.
Because it's too slow. They are not... the purpose of that snippet was not to have a good hook in the first sentence and to have it... So...
But like, here's a cat vomiting on another cat, you know, and people are like, oh my God, I can't get enough of it.
I do have a viral TikTok account just to test with stupid things that I create with AI. And then I try to follow the rules. And then, I have a few videos with hundreds of thousands of people who watched it. It's crazy. So, I agree.
Quality content is not the goal. Yeah, I don't think it works for people. I think this is true also in a lot of advertising now. So the more I've been studying kind of what performance advertisers are doing, especially with, I would say, call to action type of advertising in sectors where there's not a lot of brand awareness already.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff like fashion or travel, cheap consumer goods. In those spaces, a lot of what performs is the weirdest content. It's not the best, or like, oh, it's really emotionally resonant messaging. Yeah. It's not the stuff that you would expect to do well. It's the stuff where you go, what am I watching? Why do I feel a little dirty? You know?
Sometimes you have these videos on TikTok where someone, so it's split screen. You have the main video, and then below it, someone is playing a video game, just to make sure that I don't click away or swipe away. So to keep me watching. So if there's a boring part in the main video, I look at a car who's driving on a road somewhere, and it's crazy. But I think you can say you have a few categories, right? So that, of course, you have the low quality SEO content. That's low quality for everybody, and that's bad.
Sure.
And then you have good content. Yeah. But then you should do the extra work to make sure that people consume the good content. So to put it in the right format, maybe.
Yeah, right format, right hook, right emotional triggers, right timing.
Yeah.
And then, frankly, right now there's a component of weirdness that is hard to describe, but it speaks to that reptile brain, and it is especially effective at attention grabbing. So if you need to be attention grabbing and your goal is more views and impressions versus I want to take people who already care about this thing and make them more educated on the topic, or potentially introduce my brand to them, or get them to my, to want to buy something from me. Those folks, I think the content can be a little more classically high quality and technically optimized and right format and right messaging. And then if you're just like, I need to reach a lot of people, you want impressions and views, you got to lean weird.
Yeah, a weird clickbait title, a thumbnail that everybody sees, strange things. And I work for a lot of, or only B2B companies, and also B2B companies where they have a lot of knowledge workers. And there you want to impress people with a good story.
Right.
And I don't want the big reads. I just want people to think, whoa, he really understands this or this very well. And I want to work with this person or this company. And maybe because of that, it's a bit easier for me to adapt in the zero-click world. Because when I look at newspapers or e-commerce, I don't know what a solution is, to be honest, for the zero-click trend. It's very hard to fix it.
Very hard, yeah.
You still need the clicks. And some companies, of course, their whole revenue is based on clicks.
If you're in publishing right now and you are CPM funded, oh man, it's kind of lights out, right? Because the big platforms are just taking every opportunity from you, and they're competing with you, right? Like Google is becoming your primary competitor. Reddit is becoming your competitor. YouTube's becoming your competitor. TikTok's your competitor. That's just super hard to deal with.
Yeah, and the strange thing is, and I said it a few times before in this podcast, but not this episode, but since I think a little bit more than a year, I have a few paid subscriptions to quality content, and I didn't have that before. So there is this content overload, and there's a lot of content, but a lot of it I can trust. So and a lot of it, it's so much and it's free. So the bar is raising of what I expect, and now I want to pay for content that's even better than I consumed before. That's also a strange thing. But maybe that's not not what's happening with most people. I think for most people, they will just consume it, and a lot of businesses will go out of business.
I mean, it is a time where you either embrace the zero-click world or you perish.
Yeah, and you are, of course, because we skipped the introduction, you are the founder of SparkToro.
Yeah.
And is SparkToro also more focused on B2B, or is it a lot of different types of companies?
No, I would say we're about equal right now in terms of B2B and B2C customers and users. So a lot of people use us in direct to consumer, e-commerce, even offline businesses.
Yeah.
Basically, people use us to try and figure out where is my audience paying attention so that I can go reach them in those places.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of B2B companies, for my customers, I just want to tell their story and make an impression in the head of real people.
Right.
And I think for that, I want to know where are they hanging out on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, I think the future of much of the marketing that we've historically done on our own websites should actually be done on somebody else's website. That could be big platforms like a YouTube or a Reddit or a LinkedIn, but it also might be other publishers who capture our audience already.
Yeah.
And I need to go influence them in those places, which is just like saying, hey, I know all my customers are going to be at this conference. I should pitch to speak there. I should sponsor it. I should do some guerrilla marketing. I should set up a booth. I should, pay for lunch, whatever. Like all those kinds of things are, hey, my audience is coming to this thing. I'll go be present where I know they are. And I think you have to do that in digital too.
Yeah, I think you said it in the presentation as well. When you look at KPIs,
yeah,
we are moving back to the more classic approach that we used to have before the digital age. But also for our marketing activities, it's moving more away from what we used to do.
Yeah.
And maybe I was educated wrong because I started at a big SEO agency and I learned tricks, tactics.
Right. Yeah.
And that was marketing for me at the beginning.
Me too. I mean, I was self-educated, but same thing, right? I thought all marketing was like, oh, here's this little hack and I can point a bunch of anchor text at this page and then rank in Google and
And I think people who started working 10 years before me in different situations, they were more classically educated, but they understood the basics. And I'm happy that I understand it today. But I still see so many people focusing on traffic, short-term tactics, a lot of things that Google don't want, a lot of things that are for algorithms and not for people. Very big problem.
Yeah, it's going to be hard with, I think there's this certain mindset that's stuck around in digital marketing from the time of tactics, right? Like our early 2000s era that has pervaded the last 2 decades. And it's not just the practitioners who got trained, I don't want to say wrong, but trained for that time.
Yeah.
It's also the executives. It's like, the buyers, it's the managers, it's the C-suite.
And that's a problem today.
Yeah, they expect, hey, I hire you, digital marketing person, you get me traffic, I convert the traffic.
Yeah.
And the answer has to be like, no, we need to work on your brand and your message and where that message is being spread and how you're going to tell your story, because we cannot get you traffic just by working harder at it.
Yeah.
Like that opportunity, those days are gone.
And in B2B, you want to do business with people that you trust, that you know. And you are not going to create that with being visible in a few zero-click searches. With no face, no name, just a short answer, 3 sentences. And also not in the AI search engines in the answers. You can be a source, but I'm not sure if that will make the impact that we need for B2B companies to make.
I think all of those things, right? My brand shows up in a zero-click search, right, at the top of Google's AI overviews or something. I show up at the top of YouTube when someone does a search or is browsing around there, or in the up next section. My content appears in their feed on Threads or Reddit or LinkedIn. My brand is there when they go to ChatGPT and ask the right questions. All of those are fractions of a whole. They're all pieces of the puzzle, but they're not the solution by themselves. You need to be in multiple places where your customers and audience are going to engage. And then at the end of that cycle, which you will never be able to perfectly measure, never be able to attribute, you will never know if this TikTok video or that YouTube or this Reddit post or that LinkedIn post was responsible for the sale. You will only know that you were in all these places and those were the places your audience paid attention. And then eventually they bought from you.
Yeah, and then what I'm sometimes doing is a little bit what you said that you shouldn't do, because of course we should look at the big data, but I also look a lot at my own behavior. And when someone asks me, do you know someone for a PPC campaign or a designer or a web developer? What I do is I first think, I go to my head and who do I know and trust and have worked before. I don't want to...
You don't go to Google and type in...
No, I want to...
designer.
No, and also I don't want to damage my own reputation. So I want to give them a good name. Right. Someone who won't damage the project or so the people who I then mention, why are they top of mind in my head? I'm thinking a lot about that. And then it's in most cases, it's, for example, for you right now, the LinkedIn videos, and it used to be the Whiteboard Fridays and writing a book, being on the podium of an event, all of these things. And for me, they make more impression than being in the search results for 1 or 2 or 3 times. And of course, it's a complete picture and it depends on the person. But just being visible, building trust. Every time I see you, I start trusting you a little bit more, because that's how our brain works.
I mean, if you think about it, this is the way marketing always worked, right? Go whatever, 110 years back in time, look at Coca-Cola, right? And it's like, the early 1900s into the 1920s. And Coca-Cola is building their brand by being seen everywhere. They make sure that they're in all the restaurants. They make sure that they're being sold in all the right stores. They make sure that you see their brand on the side of buildings and on billboards. And, and then you taste the product and you're like, even if I don't enjoy it, I become familiar with it over time. It's in so many places that I grow accustomed to it.
Yeah.
And so then I'm out somewhere, I'm going to order Coke.
Yeah, and of course, personal branding is for you very important. So you must meet a lot of people. I think I'm one of them. You don't know me, but I have the feeling that I know you very well, because I think, the agency that I just mentioned, it was 2010.
Okay.
I think the Whiteboard Friday existed back then, or maybe short after that.
I think we started it in 2008. Yeah.
Yeah, and indeed before that, I think I maybe saw it a few times. But so I know you for more than 15 years and you don't know me.
Well, and I'm pretty transparent with my stuff. So,
Yeah, but that's because of that, I trust you and I know how you think. And if I have a problem that you can fix, you are top of mind. And that's how I think B2B marketing works. And that's why I think traffic is not that important. And I became very happy from your talk about
that.
There
was a really good study someone pointed me to. I think I did a video about it. I'm not sure if I put it up yet. But it was a Harvard Business Review published study about they followed a bunch of B2B buyers and they asked them about their process for selecting a new vendor, whatever it was, a CRM or an analytics tool or any kind of procurement process. And the reality was that something like 2 out of 3 or maybe 3 out of 4 people had 3 brands already in mind before they went into the search process. So like, hey, we're considering a CRM. And they were like, well, I'm thinking about, HubSpot and I'm thinking about, Constant Contact or whatever it was. And at the end of that process, when they looked back, something like 9 in 10 of them bought from one of the 3 brands that they had already gone into the process thinking about.
The B2B Marketing Institute has similar data.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. So indeed, 80% is on your list because of they are top of mind in your head. And then 80 or 90% of that will become the company that you choose.
So the opportunity of, hey, I'm just going to rank in Google and that'll solve all of my problems.
Yeah.
No, I'm just going to be in this AI tool and that'll solve all of my problems. Nothing is going to solve all of your problems other than being in all the places your audience pays attention for months and years before they're even thinking about the problem you solve.
For me, the biggest switch maybe was in my approach that I used to think in, and maybe 15 years or 10 years ago, it was more keywords, but then it was also a lot of content forms. So we need articles, or we need a knowledge base, or we need videos or images.
Blog posts, yeah.
And right now, I'm looking for stories. And I don't care what the form is. I'm looking for stories in these companies that will resonate with their target audience, with their ideal customer. And then I look at how can I capture this story from the thought leader, the industry expert. And in a lot of cases, I try to do it in front of a camera with a microphone and use the transcript and create social posts on it and video snippets and everything.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes it's not, it will not work for SEO because nobody searches for it.
Right.
Sometimes it's not good for LinkedIn, but starting with a story and then see how can we use the different platforms where our audience already is and how can we adapt to the rules of the platform, have the right form for the content. I think that will be the way for a lot of B2B companies to grow in the next years.
I couldn't agree more. I also think in B2B there's like this there's this huge knowledge gap where people only do one kind of audience research, which is keyword research. Right? They look and they see which terms and phrases people search for, but they don't go look at what content do people consume and where before they become an obvious target.
And also not who is using these search
phrases. The who, the who is one challenge, and then the what do they pay attention to? And there's all these stories of brands. Airbnb is one of the most famous ones, where they essentially pull huge amounts, hundreds of millions of dollars out of their paid and performance advertising budget, start putting it into brand plays, weird kinds of brand plays. One of my favorites that Airbnb did was, did you see the Roman Colosseum thing?
Don't think so, no.
So this was, it was to help grow the Airbnb experiences brand.
Yeah.
And so they had you can basically buy a ticket through Airbnb experiences to an exclusive gladiator fight. It's a faked gladiator fight, but in Rome's Colosseum, and the revenue for it all went to the Colosseum Restoration Project. So it's kind of a fundraiser for a good cause and, archaeological history, all this kind of stuff. There's some people in Italy who were upset about it, but that actually helped, right? That got them more press and attention. And that investment, switching it from paid performance, sort of end of the funnel, bottom of funnel stuff to brand, had a huge positive impact for Airbnb at a time when actually their brand was struggling. I don't know if you remember, like post-COVID, after the COVID bump, they were having a really hard time for a couple of years there. And then they turned it around through this redirection of effort.
Sometimes I think we are talking a lot in marketing about content, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, well, in which category can I place content and what are other things you can do in the same category? And for me, what's above content is value.
And like product value.
No, just giving value to your target audience. So the example you mentioned, you can visit the fight on a great location. I'm not sure if it's content. It's more of a live event, something you can visit, something that's great, something that gives you a good feeling because you help to raise money for a good cause. I think it's value. And I think we should think more about how can I create value for my target audience.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like in my mind, the word might be sort of interest and attention at the top of the funnel.
Yeah.
And then value in the middle of the funnel. And then almost like information that helps me make the choice at the bottom of the funnel. So I think it's different depending on where you're playing in the process.
Yeah. I have to think about that. Value can, of course, be very commercial when you are looking to buy a product or when you have a problem. And I think if you look at Seething to Care in the C states, I think there's also a lot of opportunity for value. But it's a way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, the Colosseum fight thing is it's not necessarily that it's value that's created. It is a form of content, but really what it's doing is making this weird, like we talked about earlier, weird thing that triggers your memory and your association. When you think about, hey, I'm going somewhere on a vacation and I'm staying at a hotel, but I would like to do some cool stuff while I am in this place.
Yep.
The Colosseum thing helps you think of Airbnb experiences.
Maybe here value is indeed not a good example. It's more creating associations in someone.
Yeah, it's a brand association play, right?
Yeah.
It's like you walk into the convenience store and Coke has bought out the display at the front.
Yep.
And so you're like, I guess I'll just get that, right? Or like Snickers has paid the whatever, the checkout mart at the airport to make sure that Snickers is the top one there. And you're like, well, I guess I'll buy a Snickers. It's easy arm's reach.
Indeed. I have to quickly look at the time. I still have some time. I had a few other questions that are not related to your talk, but maybe it's interesting to look at them. I think AI search engines is an interesting one. Of course, you mentioned it a few times in the presentation. When you compare it to Google, it's very small.
Very small.
If you compare it to the search element in ChatGPT to Google, it's even smaller.
Yeah.
You mentioned, I think it was 0.2% of the people who say I use, and then I thought, maybe that's me, because not that I'm convincing that it's all changed, but I am the person who I use Google for branded searches when I want to go to a specific website for news, for images, for a phone number, address, maps, things like that. But for almost all other questions, I use Perplexity or ChatGPT. And I really like it. And the fact that I'm doing it is not a reason that I take conclusions from that. But the fact that I'm liking it, I can't imagine a future within a few years from now that also this is the standard in Google and that AI search engines will be the new standard for searching. What do you think about that?
I think it is exceedingly unlikely that in 2 to 5 years we will see behavior switch from I type in a small thing or I ask a question into a microphone and I expect back an answer, a short, instant answer, not a conversational prompt that I go back and forth on with words that frequently come after other words. I don't think you're going to switch 80 or 90% of people's behavior.
And that's because, like my mother, for example, people like that are used to do it in a specific way, and they are not very digital minded.
It's really, really challenging to get people to fundamentally change their expectation around a behavior at scale. 0.2% of people, absolutely. 70% of people?
Yeah, I agree that when you are in a bubble, you think it will go harder than it actually goes in most cases. But at the same time, so I think at this moment in Germany, the AI overviews are rolled out. In the Netherlands, not yet, but it can be any moment.
Soon, yeah.
Last week, Google announced the AI mode, and I think that's more like how we use Perplexity and ChatGPT. Not exactly maybe, but I think the AI overviews are more traditional search with a little bit of AI answers infused. And this is maybe the other way around. So the blue links when you need them, but in most cases, not, because you don't need them and only some sources.
Yeah, I mean, people have been doing this for, I will say, that behavior is really similar to even before Google had featured snippets.
Yeah.
You would go and scroll down the results and you would see if you could get the answer from the little snippet that
indeed.
Google pulled so you wouldn't have to visit the website.
Yep.
People did that all the time. That was the start of the zero-click era, was Google realizing in 2006, 7, 8 that people were trying to get the answer without having to click on anything.
Yeah.
And then they were like, hey, let's just do this for sector after. So we'll put sports scores right at the top when you search. We'll put weather right at the top.
And even the meta description is sometimes, or the snippet that Google will pick.
Yeah, and Google replaced the meta description most of the time with something that they thought would quickly answer the user's query, right? And solve their problem. Then featured snippets came, now AI overviews. I think that's the direction for a lot of this. And when Google said, hey, we rolled out AI overviews and it caused searches per searcher to go way up and we made more money, they were right. 21.6% growth last year in searches per searcher. That's not them acquiring a bunch of new users. There's not new users to acquire. Google's got us all, right? 90% market share globally. That is Google convincing all of us to search a little more than we did the year before.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, I don't believe that some other platform will be the new Google. I do think that it will be a little bit more fragmented, or how do you say it in English?
Yeah, fragmented.
But that's good.
I hope so. That would be great. I would love to see more competition.
Yeah, and I think it can be also in a lot of forms. This morning I was listening to a podcast about the new Alexa. And it was talking about how, just like with ChatGPT, you can have conversations with the new Alexa from your home, voice conversations. But of course, ask questions, but also be some kind of agent who do maybe some bookings for simple stuff and things like that. I think there are a lot of use cases in how you can use the new Alexa that right now you would use Google or traditional search for. So maybe things like that will also be part of the fragmentation of search.
Yeah.
It will,
Quite reasonable. I mean, social is a huge part of the fragmentation of search already. A lot of people do searches on Pinterest, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Reddit, and that is replacing some of the things they would go to Google for.
I think most people, when they are thinking about who will be the next search engine, they think about one platform for all searches. And I think that's just maybe the biggest mistake, because I do use TikTok and Google and Perplexity and ChatGPT and maybe some others.
Yeah.
Some e-commerce stores.
Sure. Yeah. Amazon, Etsy. Yeah.
And it will. I think the list will be maybe a little bit longer, and maybe some searches will move to other platforms. But yeah,
I mean, this is why I keep repeating over and over. The macro data is interesting, but what you care about is your audience and where they go.
Yeah.
Not where everybody goes.
Yeah, and what I like about the new way of doing SEO in this zero-click world for B2B companies is I only have to create the stories and publish them on the platforms that I can reach the audience. But then the AI search engines will do the rest. And because they can use my pieces of content and let them be a part of an answer. So that's not something I think people should focus on. I think it will be a nice consequence of doing good marketing.
That sounds great. Let's hope that's how it happens.
Yeah, maybe we can. Have we missed any big takeaways from your talk?
No, I think we covered a lot of it. Yeah.
All right, then I don't think I have any questions either. So thanks a lot for the nice conversation.
Yeah,
and for the great talk today.
Thank you.
And
Thank
for
you
people who are interested, SparkToro is, I think, maybe I think they can test it for free for some queries.
That's right.
And,
yeah. You can run 5 free searches every month, and if you need more, you can always upgrade.
Great. Rand, thanks.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Gerald.
Right.
Bedankt voor het luisteren naar de Gerald Arcus podcast. En vergeet niet om je te abonneren via YouTube of in je favoriete podcast app.